Hello, Fungi's friends! I'm here today with something new for you. I'm going to show you how I make my zines from start to finish. This will include some steps doing traditional artwork, as well as my process for digitizing it and then formatting it in a program like Photoshop. There will also be a download available to help you format your own zines. This will actually be my first step-by-step tutorial, so I really hope you guys like it. So without further ado, let's get started! To begin, grab two 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, and you will start by folding each page in half by the long side. Then unfold them and use that as a guide to cut this paper in half. We are going to be making a 16-page zine that is a quarter-page size, which they used to call hamburger size when I was in elementary school. Did anybody else experience that? Now, 16 pages does include the front and back cover. You can use the same method to make an 8-page zine of the same size, but you will only need one piece of paper instead of two. Regardless of which size zine you have chosen to make today, the next step is to just staple all the pages together. At this point of developing a new zine, I find it very helpful to just go ahead and label front cover and then pages 1 through 14 and then the back cover. Then you use this blank booklet as a template to make your zine. As you can see here, I've not only sketched out what the general illustration will be for each page, as well as some notes for some of the text that will be involved. Now, typically I write all of my manuscripts for zines in a separate Word document, so it's easier to edit, but one of my first zines was completely handwritten. Whether you have already written the manuscript for your zine or not, one of the next steps is eventually going to be making the illustrations. I'm doing this with just your average Joe pencil, but I am using Strathmore watercolor paper. This way, after I have inked the illustration, I have the option to color it with watercolor later. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we are just going to be doing black and white ink illustrations. I'd like to take a minute to talk about my illustration process and how important not becoming too precious about each illustration is to me. Imposter syndrome is something that I have fought regularly in my art career, and I have found that by just making something, even if it is not perfect, and putting it out there in the world, I have slowly been able to fight that feeling that if it is not perfect, it is not worth seeing. Even though you may not think that you are the best illustrator, it is worth just trying anyway. Someone out there might really think what you're making is really amazing. And that's why I really love zines, because they don't have to be perfect. You don't need an art director to make a zine. You don't have to have a degree to make a zine. In fact, you don't even really have to be a well-practiced artist to make a zine. You can just write a bunch of text, and that's a zine. Zines are awesome in the way that they are accessible to people of all skill levels, and they can be used to pass on information, they can be used to tell a story, they can be used to teach you how to do something. Zines have a lot of potential, so don't be afraid to try and fail and try again with a zine. After I'm done outlining my illustrations, in ink, I do go back over and erase all of the pencil line with an eraser here. And then I like to go back in and darken all of the lines and make the exterior lines a little bit thicker than the inner lines and that kind of thing. But that's just my style for illustration. You do whatever feels right for you. Since I don't think I've mentioned it yet, I think it's important to note that I am using Faber-Castell India ink pens for this particular illustration. And I do that because they don't smudge when I go in to color them with watercolor later. I won't be showing that whole process in this tutorial, but I thought it was important to mention. Another one of the beauties of zines is that they are very cheap to produce because you can just make these in a standard copier. You can do them with your printer at home. You don't need a bunch of expensive printers to make zines, regardless of what type of content you are creating with them. However, for this specific method, I am creating individual illustrations that we will have to scan with a basic scanner. So the next step is going to be finish all of the illustrations. Repeat what you just did times however many pages of illustrations you need. And now for a shameless self-promotion plug. I actually illustrated all of the pages for this zine for this tutorial on my twitch.tv channel, where people can watch me work and chat with me live. And as you can see on the screen here, there are also little animated avatars for every member in chat that they get to customize, and they are all fun guys, of course. I am starting to stream art content more frequently on my Twitch TV channel, so if this seems like something that you might be interested in, go ahead and give me a follow over there, and you will get a notification the next time that I go live. My schedule sort of fluctuates at the moment, so I don't have specific days of the week that I stream or specific times, but when I do stream, it's going to be in Pacific time. But back to the tutorial. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I am using Adobe Photoshop, and the technique that I use to digitize hand-drawn art into digital line art is also pretty specific to Adobe Photoshop. You want to set your file up to be a basic 8.5 by 11 printer paper size. Now technically, if you're just doing black and white, just doing some little hand drawings, you probably don't need to go so hard and make the 300 DPI. It's just a really good habit I've gotten myself into since I make a lot of printed stuff like stickers and cards and prints. And that is the same reason why I changed our color mode to CMYK, which is a printing color profile. Since I am using Photoshop, I do plan to use artboards because I just like the way that they organize my workflow, but it is not at all a requirement to format your zines in this way at all. But to keep things organized, I'm going to name the first artboard Page 1 Front, and then I'm going to create 3 more artboards, one for the first page back, second page front, and second page back. But before I duplicated the first artboard, I went ahead and created 4 square shapes that will represent the 4 separate pages for our zine that will exist on this one sheet of paper. Now I know I'm going really fast on this part, but that's because I have a download for you to get you to this point quickly. Because believe it or not, this is not the hard part. The hardest part is formatting an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper to properly align each page for your 8 or 16 page booklet. And what I mean by that is you need your front and back, page 1, page 2, 8.5 by 11 sheets, which contain 4 pages each for your booklet, to have the proper front and back alignment so that when you staple your booklet together, your book reads page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And luckily for you, I have a Photoshop file and PDF file download that already has what page needs to go where on page 1 front or page 1 back or page 2 front, page 2 back in order to build your zines. And I have a download available for both a 16-page zine and an 8-page zine ready for you for free. And you can find the link for that download in the description below. Okay, so now we can begin the real work. You are going to need to scan all of the illustrated pages that you made earlier. If you have the option to scan in 300 DPI, I highly recommend it. If you are a digital artist, you can go ahead and skip this step, and the next part of the tutorial will also be completely relevant to you because I'm going to show you how to take a messy, scanned-in piece of traditional art and turn it into a nice, clean, crisp, digital, black and white only line art. Before we begin this technique, go ahead and rotate your illustration so they are right side up. Then navigate to Select, Color Range, and then go ahead and change the selection to Shadows Only so that we can just select the line art. Now, how much of the darkest colors it selects is gonna change based on the sliders' fuzziness and range, and you can play with those a little bit to see how much is going to be selected. You know something has been selected on your illustration if it shows up as white on this little menu. When you press OK, the menu will close, and as you can see, it has only selected the darkest parts, the parts that we selected by using that tool. So what we need to do now is go up to Selection, Inverse, and then we can delete all that extra white space and leave just the line art. Yes, I know. This is game-changing, traditional artists. Game-changing. But this tool isn't perfect, and so we're going to need to come in here and clean up some of the stuff that it may have picked up that you don't necessarily want in your illustration. So to do that, let's start by creating a background on a different layer, and I'm going to fill it with, say, white. And then I am going to come in with the selection tool and just remove all of this icky gunk that we don't need. Once you have the big pieces out of the way, I do like to come in with a color because it makes it a little bit easier to see just the tiny little flecks that the selection tool picked up that you don't want. And as you can see on closer inspection here, the line art still retains its different scale of grays because these were done with pencil and ink and the scanner didn't pick it up as one shade of black. And I'm going to show you how to make it one consistent shade of black, but we'll do that later. Now, the next step is to get all of your illustrations to this point. Wash, rinse, repeat. Once that is finished, we can start turning this into this. Using the guide, you're going to start moving each illustration to the appropriate page. If your manuscript is also ready, this is a good time to start typing in all of the text as well. You may find that you need to move text from one page to another depending on the size of the illustration or how much space the text takes. Once all the illustrations are in place, we can begin making them one solid color. This will help you when you are printing because you don't have to print in grayscale, or rather print in color, which is going to save you ink or save you money if you're getting these printed at some sort of professional shop, because you can just print this in black and white. Here's an example of what it looks like when it is finished. Due to the limitations of the selection tool, however, your edges may end up being a little bit pixelated or a little bit rough. If you want these to be smooth, I would highly suggest converting each line art to a vector, but that's something for another tutorial. But let's back up a second so I can show you how I made it one single color, in this case black, using layer styles. To get to the layer style menu, right-click any layer and select blending options. Then from this menu, navigate to the color overlay option. As you can see here, I have black selected as the color, but you could of course choose anything. What this does is cover all the pixels of the layer in one solid color. Voila! Instant digitized line art. It may not be the cleanest, but it does the trick for something like a zine. So now all you have to do is copy the layer style and paste it on every other illustration layer to have the same effect applied. And there you have it. This is your digital file for your zine. The last step we have to do is export this into a PDF so that we can print it. Since I have this set up as artboards, all we have to do is go File, Export, Artboard to PDF. The most important setting here is that you set it as a multi-page document so that you can just have the printer do the front and back printing itself. And you want to make sure that both sides are being printed in the same direction up. So in this example, I can do print on both sides, flip on long edge, but how you get the printer to orient the images in the correct direction will just depend on your printer, so you'll have to play with it yourself. Once you have that figured out, go ahead and print the pages of your zine. And then we're going to have to fold the 8x11s in half in preparation of cutting them in half so that we can assemble our zine. Before stapling the pages together, I highly recommend that you make sure you have layered each page in the correct direction. If you have numbered your pages, this will be easy. Otherwise, you'll just kind of have to align each page in the story or however you have it told so that each page goes to the correct one, keeping in mind that you are going to fold these pages in half. Once everything is aligned, go ahead and fold your booklet, staple it together, and enjoy your zine! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It is definitely the first and longest tutorial I have ever made, so if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them. You can leave them in the comments below, you can send me an email through my website, whatever you need to do. But most of all, if you enjoyed this content, please give it a little thumbs up so that I know that I should make more tutorials in the future, and let me know what kind of tutorials you want to see. So thanks again for watching, and again, if you need the guide to make your own zine, just go down into the description below and you can grab that download. Thanks everyone! Go enchant your life with a little mushroom magic today!